One of the most common questions I get, in fact I've answered it twice today, is Rob, what fish do I use in my aquaponics? Now there's two main choices. You have got table fish and you have got some ornamentals, and more about them, the ornamentals, later on in this video in another question. As for which would be best for you table fish wise, well that depends on your climate and also the laws in the area where you live. For instance, here in Queensland, Australia, very illegal to keep tilapia. So even though it's one of the #1 table fish around the world, we cannot grow them here in Queensland. In fact, if we get caught taking them out of the rivers and not disposing of them properly, there is also huge fines. But we can grow a load of native species that can handle the warm weather rather well. Things like the Tandanus catfish, we've got one in our sump tank. The jade perch, they handle warm weather. The barramundi really do like warm water. They tend to die off when the water temperature drops a little bit, around about the 16 to 14 degree range. You can start to have fish losses if the temperature falls suddenly. So not something we can grow all year round, but definitely something we can grow through summer here. Whereas the jade perch, we can grow all year round along with the silver perch. There's also things like your sleepy cods. They really don't mind a little bit of warm water either. As for the cooler southern states, a lot of those folks will use things like silver perch, and through the cooler months, they tend to grow trout. Rainbow is very popular, so is golden and a few other varieties of trout. Redfin, where it's legal in Victoria, illegal in New South Wales. That's pretty much what's on offer here in Australia. I mean, there are a few others like the Murray cod, but they're generally a little bit slower growing. Now you folks over in the States, you're spoilt for choice. You've got your tilapias, which not legal in every state and every jurisdiction. Cooler areas, I've seen salmon being used in some commercial operations, and there are a few other native species. Jack Spirko uses sunfish, I believe they're called. I'm not really familiar with them. There are a few different catfish that you can also use there as well. Sturgeon, I've heard of people using sturgeon as well. Carp is also an option. In some places it is legal to use in your aquaponics, along with your ornamentals, which we'll talk about later on. In saying all that, of course it depends on your climate. You can bend the rules a bit, like Michael with his catfish in the northeast. He has them inside and the grow area outside. Even Owen here in Queensland, Australia, he has all his aquaculture in the garage. He's got a bit of heating in there, and he's able to keep his barramundi on the feed all through winter. So there are ways you can bend the rules by altering your microclimate within your system and on your property to get fish to grow all through the season. So all that being said, yeah, anyone who asks me what fish should I use in the aquaponics, there's a long list no matter where you live. It all just depends on how dedicated you want to be to changing the environment they live in, and also to what is legally available in a lot of the cases. So I hope that helps you out. Just quickly, the fish wanted me to remind you that we do have that Backyard Aquaponics Beginner's Guide. It's an online interactive guide where you can learn about aquaponics if you're new to the growing method. There's a link down in the description, $19.95 US. It is fully interactive. Basically, you can ask it questions and it will present different sections of the guide for you to learn more about aquaponics. So do suss it out if you're new to aquaponics and you want to have a bit of a crack at learning how to start a system off the right way the first time. First of all, we have Stephen. How do you deal when the fish lay eggs in the system? That is really not an issue for us here in Australia because our native species don't tend to reproduce in small little backyard systems. I have heard legends of it happening in larger commercial ones, just what people have said on forums and whatnot. I do know that you folks over in the States who grow with tilapia quite often will find little fingerlings floating around the place. People that I have seen in the States who breed their fish tend to get a breeding couple and they'll put them in a aquarium off to one side. The females will mouth brood and then they collect those fry, rear them up a little bit larger and then pop them in the system. The folks I've seen who do that tend to rotate their fish fairly quickly. I'm quite happy to let ours grow well over 1 kilogram or 2 pounds here, whereas a lot of those folks will try and get them out at around about the pound mark, and that way they've always got a certain size fish going through their systems. For folks who it just happens in their system, I know they've turned up under raft beds, they've turned up in radial flow settlers, all sorts of places in sump tanks. So it's just one of those things. Certain species will do it, others won't. So I hope that helps. If you are interested as well in seeing how the Aussie fish are bred, the jade perch in particular, I went up and saw the perch man, Bruce, and I'll leave a link below this video and you can suss out how our jade perch bred, so he can sell them to the domestic market here in commercial quantities overseas. So I find all that stuff very interesting, and I hope to do a bit of a catch up with Bruce again and bring that to YouTube as well. Solar MX6, g'day Rob, can you recommend a low maintenance fish for growers that want to focus on vigorous plant growth and not necessarily meat? Well, my go-to here in Australia, because it sort of depends on where you are as well, but my go-to here in Australia is pretty much all carp. Carp species includes goldfish and koi if you're in the southern states. They can handle the cooler temperatures as well as the more extreme ones to a point. So yeah, they're a great little fish. Those fish are definitely feasible and will grow fast. In saying that, I do know people who just kept barramundi and other native fish, barra up north in Queensland that is, not in Melbourne or Tasmania. They've kept native Australian species even though they don't eat them, and they donate them to family and friends who do partake of the odd fish here or there. So that could be something to look into. The other thing is, if you want to go for a smaller system, you could use just normal ornamental fish, things like guppies, gudgeons, firetail gudgeons are a good one for little aquariums here in Australia. Rainbow fish is another good one. Pacific blue eyes here in Australia, they're another good one. If you're looking at a smaller system, you could pack a fair amount of fish in there, and fairly easy maintenance wise, fairly hardy. Best thing to do, I suppose, would really be inquire at your aquarium for your local climate and conditions and see what they recommend. Just explain to them that you're a nutty aquaponicist and you're trying to grow some plants with some fish poop, and yeah, see what they recommend. Oh, Bianca's just mentioned watch the size of your pump and how you design the system. Very true. If you have the pump in the fish tank and you've got tiny wee bitty fish, you're going to end up with fish all through your system. So yeah, you might want to look at some sort of a filter over the front. We found gudgeons in the radial flow settler that were in the sump tank. Anyway, that's a different story. So I just popped in a little bit more feed for these jade perch of ours, make sure they got full bellies. One question I have had a bit pertains to the chop and flip barrel system that I made a couple of years ago. And you can check out that little video up there if you want to learn more about it. But a lot of people have asked me how many fish that will grow to the size of these guys, about 1 pound or 500 grams, can I put in that little barrel system? And I've got to tell you that the answer is zilch. I wouldn't put any table fish in a barrel system that size. What I would do is I would stock it with ornamental fish, say some guppies or gudgeons or rainbow fish, something along those lines, even mollies, and run the system on ornamental style fish. I know a load of people who have made similar systems and they just run them on goldfish, and you know, they manage to grow a load of healthy plants just using small fish like that.